Holy Toledo! It's like a propeller on an airplane. Hey, welcome back to ZK Mastertech. So, I'm finally going to continue repairs on the 9100 here. In case you missed it, this tractor here, whenever you would start it, the engine would run away and would go to 2800, sometimes 3000 RPMs. Yeah, giddy up. It's way wide open throttle. So, did some electrical testing on the wires between the pump and the ECU, and I did find one of the wires for the pump actuator was shorted to ground, like dead short, 0.1 ohms to ground. So instead of just running one wire, you know, we've been fighting this thing with this fuel pump issue. I went ahead and built a 4-wire harness, and I'm just going to run 4 new wires to this pump that goes to the actuator and the rack position sensor, and we're just going to completely eliminate the wiring for now. So I'm going to go ahead and snip the wires, and I'm going to run this harness underneath the cab, around the engine, into the pump. I'm going to go ahead and put new weather pack terminals on the ends of this wire and then snap them into the connector, so we got new terminals as well. And let's just cross our fingers and hope this thing will work. Right now in its current state, it just cranks and won't start now. I was cranking it and starting it and steering it and pushing it with the telehandler, just trying to get it in the shop, but it eventually wouldn't even fire anymore. So I don't know, crazy electrical gremlins on a 9100. So let's get into it. All right, so I got these wires spliced into the ECU harness here, wrapped in loom, got it fished underneath the cab. Popped it out underneath the reservoir. Got it right up here. You know, I'll secure that later. I just want to see if it works. And then popped it out over here. And I popped the weather pack terminals, original ones, out of the connector. I crimped on new weather pack terminals and seals on here. Popped them in the connector. Connected it back together. Guess we're going to see what happens. Alright, well, I tried it. Crank no start. Cranks beautifully, got good cranking speed. It just will not fire. I went through, bled the fuel system, made sure, you know, we had good prime on the fuel pump. Nothing. You know, check the power wire going to the fuel pump actuator. Got 12.5 volts. So the only thing that I didn't really check was the terminal fit on the ECU connector. So I went through the terminals on there, and I did find one that fit pretty loose, and it was one of the wires that I tied into and ran. So very carefully I popped that terminal out. I went to the parts department and tried to find a replacement terminal. Guess what? They're obsolete. Can't get them anymore. If you want to do anything with that connector, you have to order a service kit, which you have to replace the entire connector and all the terminals to a new style. I'm not going through all that, so I did a little surgery on the terminal and stuck a needle in there and kind of bent the tab a little bit so it would grab on to the male pin a little tighter. And then I popped it back in, plugged the ECU back in, crank no start. So I have an ECU 31, 34, 35, and 36. They're all codes for either the pump rack or the pump rack position sensor. They will not clear no matter what I do. So I eliminated the wiring. I've done the ohm tests on the fuel pump internally in itself. That all checks good. So the only thing really left, in my opinion, is the ECU. I looked the ECU up in parts and it's obsolete as well, but I was talking to my service manager and he believes we can actually still get an ECU through a third-party vendor. So I guess we're going to look into that next. So the saga of the 9100 continues at the moment. So I was really hoping those wires were going to fix it, but here we are. So Now I'm going to go to the country. I got a 8R 410 that has a fan drive problem, and I went there to diagnose it. The ECU is seeing high resistance in one of the circuits for the fan drive, which now is a gear case that runs off the crankshaft that is coupled to an electric viscous clutch. There is an internal wiring issue inside of that clutch. I determined that. I did all the resistance checks between the ECU and the clutch. The problem is in the clutch, so whenever there is an open or high resistance, the ECU's response is to just make the fan go wide open. So this thing is a humming. Customer's saying he's burning a lot of extra fuel because that fan's just basically locked up. And it pretty much turns the same RPM as the engine. And let me tell you what, she moves some air right now. So I got a new clutch, and we're going to head to the country and get that thing replaced. So let's get into that. All right, had about a 40-minute drive to the farm here. We got a 8R 410. If you guys want to know my favorite tractor, it's this guy right here. I love the 8R 410. There is a lot of changes that they made on these new 8Rs that I just really like. This thing is an absolute workhorse. You would not believe what this thing is capable of. And you know what I like about it the most? It tells me where it hurts. You know, it says, hey, I hurt right here. And I go, okay, tell me how to make sure that's where you hurt, and then I'll fix you. And it does, unlike the 9100. So the electronics on these things are absolutely incredible. The innovation technology on these tractors are just, it blows my mind what these things are capable of. Anyway, came here, set a code for ECU 647.05, which is a high resistance and the fan drive circuit. So the driver on the ECU shuts down, and then the fan goes to maximum speed, and then it sets the code. So I checked all these circuits from the ECU connectors right there down to the fan drive, did all the resistance checks step by step in the book, because, you know, I haven't had any issues at all with the fan drives on these. And it said replace component. So ordered up a fan drive for this thing. It's going to be covered under extended powertrain warranty. And yeah, we just got to take the side shields off. That's another thing I like about these, is they have a lot nicer side shields that are a lot easier to get off. 3 bolts on each side. Those things come off. I just like it a lot better. The front auxiliary drives on the front instead of the rear like it used to be. So our alternator and AC compressor, everything's on the front. You know, we only got one belt. We don't have no variable speed belt, just a serpentine belt, just the way I like it. All right, got the side shield off here. You can see, look, AC compressor, alternator, right there, easy to get to. Serpentine belt. Here we have a chain drive gear case that runs with high guard oil in it, and it just directly splines with a rubber coupler into the crankshaft. And then we have a electronic viscous clutch that gives us our variable speed fan drive. There, yeah, that gear case just slides into the coupler right there. If you want to change the belt, you just take out, I think, 4 bolts, and it slides on this shaft right here, and you just slide the gear case forward, and then you just get the belt out of there. Easy peasy, put a new belt on, slide the gear case on, bolts back in, done. And I like that this frame rail right here sits a little lower, so you can get stuff in and out of here a whole lot easier. Really like that. So now we're going to go up in the cab. We're going to go to the ECU address 40 and 41. So those are actual and desired speed of our fan. And I'm going to show you guys exactly what it's doing. Start it up. Here's our code. We're going to go to the menu, go to System, Diagnostic Center, go to Controllers. We're going to scroll down to ECU. We're going to go to address 40. Alright. There's our actual fan speed of 1004. The desired is 400. So it's giving her all she's got, Captain. Watch this. Holy Toledo! That's like a propeller on an airplane. So yeah, it's way too fast, but like I was talking about, if we've got a circuit fault, it's going to default to high speed because it's going to shut the driver down for the control solenoid and that viscous clutch. Alrighty. Holy moly, does that thing blow some wind. Alright, so the ECU is monitoring several inputs for temperatures, you know, our ambient temp, our coolant temp, our transmission oil temp, whether the AC is on or off. You know, we've got many temperature inputs that are being put into the ECU, and then it is commanding the fan to a certain speed in order to keep up with the cooling demand, right? So the ECU will not command the fan to maximum speed in the software set point up to 226 degrees. It's at the max that it has in the software, but it has another extra little bit that it'll give it, but the coolant temp has to reach 235 degrees in order to reach the speeds that we just achieved 2 seconds ago. So it will run 34% more than crankshaft speed, I believe. But yeah, that thing hums like no other when it goes to high speed, which puts an extra load on the engine, which causes you to burn more fuel. So we want to be able to run just the exact amount of fan speed that we need for the proper amount of cooling, so this thing can be as efficient as possible. So now that I told you how this thing kind of works, we're going to go ahead and yank this fan out of here. All right, first step here, we're going to disconnect this electrical connector and unbolt that clamp, get that wiring out of the way. And then that'll allow us to put a wrench on this shaft right here. We're going to wedge it against this shaft. And then this nut is righty-loosey, lefty-tighty, left-handed threads. So we're going to be turning the other wrench that way. And then we're going to thread this fan clutch off with the fan assembly, and we're going to take it out the left side. All right, so I got an 1.25 inch wrench on the shaft, a 2-inch wrench on the clutch hex there, and I just rotated over until my wrench got caught on that shaft, and then we're going to break this thing loose. Okay. That wasn't too bad. Oh, here we go. Now we're rocking. Oh, there it is. Wow. It's just gonna come right out. Well, isn't that nifty? Huh. Awesome. Alrighty. So now we'll take all these bolts out. That. Ta-da! Shake this off. I mean, everything, well, it is slightly crunchy. Anyway, we don't want you no more. You died. Ta-da! Oh yeah, that's way smoother. Way smoother. Cool. Boop. Man, this is an older 8R. We'd still be working on getting the belt out of there. They made this fan drive system a lot simpler, in my opinion, and it was way overdue. Torqued. Now we just toss that thing back in. Let's just gently toss this back in. You're almost in. Don't drop the wrench. Wow. Let's get this out of here. That is not bad. Lefty tighty. So this is probably the hardest part, just getting this thing to thread back on my hand. Work with me now. It's hard to keep it straight. Oh, I got it. I think with practice I'll get better at that. Hopefully I won't get much practice. Threading. Threading. Okay. Slip that guy that way. Till you wedge up there. There we go. Just gonna give you a nice little torquey. Yep. Torqued. I just gotta hook my wiring back up and it's gonna do fan things. Wiring is hooked back up. Let's go give her a test run. Alright, there's our actual speed. Way lower at idle, right where we want it. Speed it up. Nice. So it's not commanding that fan to super high speed because we don't need it right now. The ambient temp is fairly cool outside. It's only 67 degrees. It just got done raining a little bit. So plus, you know, the coolant temp's not very high. Only got 3 bars on there. So our inputs into the ECU are not, you know, the temperatures are not very high and the demand is not going up. You know, I've got the AC on, so I think it's commanding the fan to go a little higher to get our condenser cooled off to bring our high side pressure down on our air conditioning system. So, but now it has varying control. Before it wouldn't control, it would just go with the crank speed. That's 2200 RPM. It's only spinning at 500, so now the ECU's got the ability to control that fan speed, so problem fixed. All right, so that was easy peasy. Even though we did have, a failure here, these new fan drives have proved themselves to be pretty reliable. I mean, we have a ton of these new 8R's out there. This is the first one that I've actually had to replace a part on the fan drive. So knock on wood, so far so good. These things are working really, really well. In my opinion, haven't had any issues with them. They're pretty trouble free. So, and it's a lot easier to work on in my opinion. So kudos to you, John Deere. Thank you for making that better on my body and my mind. So now we got this done. I'm going to see what's next. Maybe I go back to the 9100 or maybe there's somewhere else I got to go today. You never know. Okay, we're back working on the 9100. It's alive. Me and my buddy Ward, he's been a John Deere technician for 52 years. And we were just brainstorming, trying to come up with something. There's a plug on these pumps on the front that you can take out. And I'll show you here in a little bit. And you can actually see the rack inside the fuel pump. We were wanting to take that plug out, but it's in a real difficult spot to get to when it's on the engine. So I'm like, well, what if we just take, we had a couple extra pumps laying around. What if we just take one of those, set it up there, and turn the key on and see if the rack moves on that one, to make sure that our ECU and our wiring and everything's good. So we thought that was a good idea. So I put that pump up there and Ward turns the key on and rack did move. I'm like, what the heck? I said, well, try to clear the codes with this pump on there, because I read in Service Advisor, if I think that the ECU 31 code is stored in there or active, it shuts the driver down for the fuel rack actuator in there. So he went and cleared the codes, and the codes cleared. I'm like, you got to be kidding me. So then he cranked it, and the rack on the spare pump came out. I mean, it moves out about 1.5 inches almost, pretty far. I'm like, well, heck, it moved. The codes didn't come back. So I'm like, well, let's plug in the original pump. Tractor fires right up, idles like a dream. Never in a million years. I've never seen Ward laugh that hard, or else I haven't seen him laugh that hard in a really long time, but he got tickled over that situation, because apparently to clear the pump codes on a 9100 is you need an extra fuel pump to plug into the harness so the codes will clear. Never in a million years, but it'll happen here every time, I swear. So check this out. No! Are you serious? What the hell? It's alive! All right, it finally runs, but it intermittently dies again. So it's not running away like it did before, but now I've got a problem with it intermittently dying, and there is a problem with the internal little pigtail harness coming off the pump. and I can't get any parts for it. So whenever I wiggle that little tiny harness, I'll show you here in a minute, I can get the engine to die, and sometimes it'll crank and no start, and now I can wiggle that harness and then it'll fire up. So it just won't work right. I'm so tired of this tractor right now. So I called the pump shop, and we got to take the pump back off again so they can go in and replace that internal wiring harness. So, but I did take the governor housing off my spare pump so I could see, you know, what all was going inside there. Let me show you. Okay, here's this electronic governor assembly. The problem is somewhere right in here, and you can't take this out very easily. It's all kind of made into this housing because the wires come in here like that and then distribute. So your components in here, here's your speed sensor, and it's reading on this tone wheel right here. Here's your rack in there that moves, and then this is where the position sensor rides on this little center pole right here. And then this piece here is actually your rack actuator. This is what's moving, hitting right here and moving the rack. So the pump shop is going to install a new wiring harness in here, and hopefully that will take care of my last issue with this stupid thing dying. But now I have to take this fuel pump off again. Great. Okay, so the first step in order to remove this pump is we need to get the engine rotated over to number 1, top dead center. So I'll put a crank turning tool in there and got a timing pin. I rotated over until the timing pin went into the flywheel, and then I come over here and look at this gear. There's a hole. See that hole inside of a hole right there? That'll be about the 10 o'clock position, and then you can confirm by looking in this hole here. There's an Allen plug. You take that out, you can see those 2 marks right there. Those should be lining up together. So if you don't have those 2 marks there, then you're probably on number 6, top dead center, and then just go ahead and rotate 1 crank revolution, and then it should line up there. Luckily I did have some cheater marks right here that's still there from the last time I pulled this pump off. So yeah, so now we just got to get, you know, all the lines and electrical disconnected, get the nuts off the studs here. I'm gonna have to take those Torx bolts out and take the gear off the pump, you know, lots of fun things. All right, so I got all the oil and fuel lines off of here. Well, you only got one oil line right here, but all the fuel lines off. You got to take the oil filter off. I've got all the Torx screws out of the gear, so I'm going to leave the gear right there in place, sitting right meshed into where it needs to be. So whenever I go back together, it hasn't moved a tooth. You know, it should just be ready to be aligned. I just got to make sure my pump marks line up whenever I get it back. I got all there's studs all where there's 4 studs with 9/16 nuts. These back ones are a whole lot of fun to get out of there, but you can get to them with some swivels and long extensions. So the pump is now ready to remove. Just like that. I got the pump all capped off and in a bag and some pig mat in a box ready to take to the pump shop. Alright, so I sent the pump on its way. It's going to Scheid Diesel in Effingham, Illinois. So we'll let them boys put a new wiring harness in the electronic governor. And now I'm going to move on to my next project. Check this out. So I'm going to be installing this 4,000 watt pure sine wave inverter into my service truck. So my generator, the carburetor went out in it, and we were having a hard time getting the right carburetor, and we ordered 2 different carburetors and still not the right one. It was a big mess. So we decided, you know, heck with the generator, let's just go big inverter route, and I think that'll be better for me anyway. So I'm going to be mounting this guy right here in the back seat. That way I can run my Milwaukee chargers and stuff back there. I can run an extension cord into here, and then I can run a vacuum pump and battery charger, and you know, all the things that I used to run with the generator. The generator I had was only 2500 watt rated, so I mean this one's 4000 continuous and 8000 peak watt, so I think that ought to do the job. I've got some 0 gauge cable, so I'm actually going to be doing dual runs of 0 gauge. This is the cable that came with it. That's not going to be enough length, and the more length that you got, the thicker the cable that you need. I did the calculations on there, so I went with dual runs of 0 gauge. Should have just the right amount of volt drop so we don't heat up the cables. It's even got a remote control where you can turn it on and off, so that's pretty cool. I got some 400 amp inline fuse holders, some fuses, some cable ends there, so I'm all ready to go. But the first thing I'm going to do is just kind of mock it up. I'm going to cut those cables in half, run dual runs, and just, you know, go straight to the batteries on the truck, and then I'm going to plug in my battery charger right there, and you know, just make sure everything's going to work okay and not get hot and all that stuff, because I don't want to do all the work and installing it in the truck, you know, if it isn't going to work. So I'm going to work on getting that done. All right, so I got it hooked up. I just did one run here, and that's the amount of cable I'm going to need to get it to the back seat. And I just got it hooked up to the battery, got my inline 400 amp fuse in there, got it tied into the battery. We're grounding straight to the battery there. I've got a Milwaukee charger plugged in, it's charging. And then I've got the battery charger set on engine start, 200 amps. Just sitting there, it's ready. Well, it's going to cool down mode, but when that charger was running, it was only at 700 watts here. Now we're down to 200 because that charger's went into cool down mode, but we're at 119 volts and it was at 700 watts. So we're not even a fourth of what this thing could do with one run, and I've been feeling this cable and it's not hot at all. Now we're going to give it to ultimate test here. We got the Lincoln welder 110 hooked up to the inverter. Ben's going to lay a bead on this rod right here. We're going to see if it'll do it and how many amps. Watts, I should say. Holy smokes. Nope, it's mad. It said overload. It did it for a split second, but...
Turn it down to, let's say turn it down a couple of ticks. On the
Oh, you want that down. Alright.
see if we can stitch roll.
Okay.
God.
What's that?
I said, color me impressed. I can't believe that. I mean, you ain't gonna go build the Eiffel Tower, but
Yeah. Well, the welder was turned up all the way, wasn't it?
yeah. Well, I had to go Tim Allen.
Yeah. Yeah, it didn't like all the way, but it handled it. But what I was watching was the battery voltage was starting to drop. Like this battery gauge right here, like it started going down and down, and it got down to like 10 volts.
Well, that's what I was trying to see what the duty cycle would be on it, how long you could weld it.
Yeah.
But if you were stitch welding something, or if you just had to do some sheet metal, you could definitely.
Yeah, you could easily do some little light work.
Yeah.
You know, you're not going to be welding 1/4 inch plate continuous beads with that thing, but
Oh, but if you had to fix, if you had to do some stitch welds with some 3/8 on a piece of
But if it'll handle that, it's going to handle pretty much all the things that I'm normally going to be using it for.
Yeah. Far better than that gas generator that wouldn't.
I'm going to shut this thing off. That thing was pretty cool, wouldn't it, Ben?
Yeah.
I am kind of shocked. I'm glad I got to see what it does when you overload it, though. It just beeps and says, "Hey, stop.
No more."
Get some help." But yeah, that was legit, dude.
For the price point, holy smokes.
Yeah, so this inverter was like $350 on Amazon.
This cable didn't even get hot.
No, it didn't. I was touching it. I don't think we need dual runs.
Nope.
As long, my ground's only going to be probably 2 foot straight to the frame ground once I get it in there. So that was pretty sweet.
That was awesome.
It did the battery charger like it was nothing.
Yeah, what, 600?
700 watts is the highest I've seen on that
what
thing.
What did it peak at on watts? Were you watching that?
Somewhere around like 2,600.
So not even the working load of this.
No.
But that's just going to be dependent on how quickly you can charge your batteries back up.
Yeah, that's
your drawback.
That was the factor. The battery voltage was going down pretty quick. But for the...
Does this dog... No, it just has one battery. Or does it have two?
It's got two batteries, yeah. It's got one right there and one right there. Yeah, but for the most part, the things I'm going to be running, it's going to work just fine.
Yeah. Heck yeah.
All right, so I'm super impressed with the inverter. Tomorrow, I'm going to try to get everything hooked up. I got to take everything out of the back feed area of the cab to run my cables and everything. And then I'm going to screw this thing onto the back wall that I have made in the back of the cab. And yeah, get my big cables ran through the floor. I've already got a hole in the floor anyway, where I ran a small pair of power and ground 12 volts that I've got a 12 volt bank already in there and a small inverter. But I'm going to keep the small 12 volt bank, but I'm going to get rid of the small inverter, put this guy in its place. So that's going to be all for this video. I appreciate you guys watching. Like the video, subscribe below if you haven't already, helps me out. Comment below, let me know how I'm doing. And until next time, keep that green iron moving.